All right, so now we have to look at the chunk and the meat of Jen Wilkin's book, Women of the Word. And we're thinking about the 5 P's of study: studying with purpose, studying with perspective, studying with patience, studying with a process, and studying with prayer. So the first is going back to the purpose. And we touched on this a little bit before, but the purpose of the Bible is really to tell an entire story. And every time we want to look at the Bible, we want to look at how does this lead to the glory of God and the sanctification of Jesus, um, or sanctification through Jesus. How does it point to that big picture? And so, for example, the story of Noah, right? If you look at Noah simply, you would see an obedient man who was able to save his family from his obedience, as well as an older man who got really drunk and was actually shamed. And you would say, okay, why is the Bible highlighting this person? He actually wasn't perfect. But understanding it as a bigger picture helps us to see that it points to no other man in the Bible other than Jesus had real perfection. And it really kind of points to our need as humans for a Savior, even when we're obedient and trying to do what the Lord wants us to do. And so she encourages us to look at it as a meta narrative, which is that every single story, every single poem, everything is going to point to the reign and rule of God, and use that as your purpose no matter what you're reading. Even when you're in Numbers and you're reading about the laws and the rules and these things that seem minute, everything has a purpose. And if you challenge yourself, you're pushing yourself to see what is the bigger purpose. What is this saying about the reign and the rule of God? After purpose is studying with perspective, and understanding that there is a cultural and historical perspective to the Bible. So we know that the Bible was written in ancient times, and we know that everything that was written kind of was impacted by whatever was going on during that time. And so the analogy that she uses is looking at it like the city of Rome, right? If you look at Rome modern day and didn't understand the historical context that Rome is actually built on top of a city, right? And that there's a city underneath, you wouldn't understand why they have so many rules and so many laws for the way that they build and the things that they are allowed to do. But when you understand that historical context, it gives you much more respect because you understand the foundation of the city. And that's how she pushes us to look at the Bible, to constantly dig for meaning. And actually the word exegesis means digging for meaning. So when we're reading a passage, we're thinking about what does this text mean back in the day when this was written. We're going to look at who exactly wrote it, when was it written, to whom, and what style, and why. Let me say that again a little slower. Who wrote it? When was it written? To whom was it written? In what style was it written? And why? And we're going to use that as our basic principles of perspective when we're reading. And we can think about, even with the style, thinking about how many different types of writing are in the Bible and why was it chosen. What was going on, who was reigning, who was ruling, and why was it happening. We're actually going to really push ourselves to be historians. And in our conversation, we're going to talk about all that we know, and we're going to dig in and do the work to actually figure out the historical and cultural context, because it makes a difference for understanding and giving us true perspective while we're reading. The next one, and I think the hardest one for me, is to study with patience. And she pushes us to understand that there is a process of understanding the Bible. A lot of times when I read, and a lot of Bibles even are set up so that the commentary is right there. A lot of the work is done for you. I don't know. I've definitely had moments, and still have times when I want to read something and I want to understand the meaning so that I can actually go ahead and use it. But what we're doing right now is really pushing for reading the Bible to have a bigger and greater understanding, and not going back to those things that I was talking about, the Xanax or the Jack Spat approach, not going back to using the Bible just to help us feel better in the moment. Instead, we're being really patient with it to have a bigger understanding, and we know that it's a process. So we're really putting the commentary away. We are pushing for aha moments and understanding that they come after feeling lost, and being okay with reading something and not getting it at all, and being okay with approaching and coming to our weekly meetings with more questions and answers. So saying, I actually don't know why God said this right here, or I don't know who this person is. Can someone help me out? And having that conversation together is going to lead us to bigger understandings. Also, pushing away from wanting to feel satisfied. So again, this is what I was alluding to earlier. A lot of times when we read, we just want to come away feeling like, I know better now, I can do better now, I'm stronger. Instead of being okay with, like, I've read this to comprehend and to understand, and I'm trusting that the Lord is going to lead me to a deeper love and knowledge of Him. And continuing to show up. So every single week, digging into that chapter and showing up with your questions and with your misunderstandings or with whatever it is, and being patient with the circumstance. And then she talks a little bit about different seasons. So you may be thinking, this sounds like a lot, and it might not be something that I can definitely do all the time. It's not meant to be how we read the Bible every single time. And she speaks specifically about a certain season in our life. She says, some months, just keeping my body and soul together for myself and my family seemed to occupy almost every waking moment. I don't consider those months to have been lost time or setbacks to my growth. They were times to employ patience, not with active learning of the scriptures, but with waiting on the Lord. They deepened my desire for study. So I would really push you to know whether or not this is something that you can commit to pray about it, because if it's not in this season, if it's not time, I think that's okay too. And she's really encouraging you to just be patient with the timing. All right, I'm going to come back with the other piece.